The impact of Trump's cuts on Americana music, a lifeline at risk. Imagine a world where the soulful tunes of Americana music fade into silence, not because the artists stopped creating, but because the platforms that amplify their voices are being stripped away. This is the stark reality facing many musicians and radio stations today, as President Trump's decision to defund public broadcasting threatens to sever a vital lifeline for American roots music. But here's where it gets even more alarming. This isn't just about losing a genre. It's about silencing stories, cultures, and communities that rely on these stations to thrive. For Tami Neilson, a seasoned country noir singer-songwriter, the joy of seeing her album Neon Cowgirl climb into the top 10 of the Americana Music Association's radio chart was short-lived. Just as she celebrated this milestone, news broke that the very stations championing her music were losing their congressional funding. It was an absolute gut punch, Neilson reflects from her New Zealand home. After decades of climbing this mountain, to have the ground pulled out from under you, it's devastating. 2 weeks ago, Congress approved Trump's plan to slash funding for public broadcasting, a move that Rolling Stone previously highlighted as part of his broader attacks on media outlets that don't align with his narrative. While the cuts target public radio and TV as a whole, the impact on stations dedicated to American roots music is particularly dire. These stations rely on funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB, to cover music licensing fees that without support could force them to go silent. And this is the part most people miss. It's not just about the music, it's about the communities these stations serve. The CPB, which had been allocated over $1.1 billion for the next 2 years, announced it would begin winding down operations following the funding cuts. This leaves stations like Nashville's WMOT, which plays everything from Tyler Childers to Graham Parsons, scrambling to cover their $200,000 licensing fees. Without that license, you can't play music, explains Jesse Scott, WMOT's program director. We're here to be the first rung on someone's ladder to success, but the ripple effects go deeper. The Folk Alliance International, FAI, folk chart, which has tracked the genre for over 25 years, depends on community and non-commercial stations to report new releases. These stations are where artists get discovered, says FAI Executive Director Jennifer Rowe. If they disappear, so does the opportunity for local communities to hear music that commercial stations ignore. Local NPR stations don't just play records. They host live sessions, promote local shows, and connect artists with lifelong fans. For artists who don't write hits, these stations are a lifeline, says veteran singer-songwriter Mary Gauthier. They introduce us to people who could support us for an entire career. To lose that, it's terrifying. And here's where it gets controversial. Gauthier, who is openly gay, questions whether the defunding is a deliberate attempt to silence artists who don't align with the current administration. Speaking our minds through our songs is a big deal, she notes. Without these platforms, how will we reach the people who need to hear our voices? Some stations, like WMOT, are turning to fundraising or hoping for wealthy donors to step in. But with no clear solutions in sight, the future remains uncertain. Even as Americana music reaches more people and fills more prestigious venues than ever. In September, the Americana Music Association will celebrate its 25th annual Americana Fest in Nashville, but the shadow of these cuts looms large. We're not political, Scott insists. We don't do news. We just play the music. But in a world where art and politics are increasingly intertwined, can music ever truly be apolitical? What do you think? Is defunding public broadcasting a necessary budget cut or a deliberate attack on cultural diversity? Let us know in the comments. Breaking. CPB shuts down after Congress cuts $1.1 billion public broadcasting funding. NPR PBS hit. After nearly 6 decades of serving American communities, one of the nation's most trusted institutions, is about to disappear forever. The shocking announcement came Friday when Patricia Harrison, who leads the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, revealed that CPB will cease all operations by September 30th. The reason? A devastating $1.1 billion funding cut that completely eliminates federal support for public broadcasting through 2027. But here's where it gets controversial. This isn't just about money. It's about the future of independent journalism in America. For those unfamiliar with how public media works, think of CPB as the financial lifeline connecting federal dollars to your local NPR and PBS stations. Without this crucial funding pipeline, the entire ecosystem that brings you Morning Edition, PBS NewsHour, and educational children's programming like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood faces an uncertain future. The decision came after President Trump signed legislation that stripped away this funding as part of a broader $9 billion spending reduction package. The vote largely split along party lines, with Republicans arguing that public media wastes taxpayer money and shows bias against conservative viewpoints. Democrats and public media advocates strongly disagreed, but their voices weren't enough to save the funding. And this is the part most people miss. While NPR headquarters relies minimally on direct federal funding, the real victims are the approximately 1,000 local stations across America. These community broadcasters, particularly those serving rural and economically disadvantaged areas, depend heavily on CPB grants to keep their operations running. For many of these stations, losing federal support could mean going dark permanently. The human cost is already becoming apparent. Harrison announced that most CPB employees will lose their jobs when the fiscal year ends. A skeleton crew will remain until January 2026, tasked only with wrapping up financial obligations and ensuring music licensing agreements don't collapse the remaining public media infrastructure. I didn't really see a day where this separate institution, which is set up to serve the public, would be shut down, admitted Tim Bruno, who manages Radio Catskill, an NPR affiliate in upstate New York. His words capture the disbelief rippling through the public broadcasting community. The timing couldn't be more ironic. Just last month, a comprehensive Harris poll revealed that 66% of Americans actually support federal funding for public radio, viewing it as excellent value for taxpayer investment. Even more surprising, a majority of Republicans, 58%, backed continued funding, despite their party's leadership pushing for elimination. But here's what makes this situation truly unprecedented. This marks the first time since CPB's creation in the 1960s that Congress has completely refused to provide funding. The organization was specifically designed to serve as a buffer between government and public media, ensuring editorial independence while channeling necessary financial support. Some stations aren't waiting for the inevitable. WQED in Pittsburgh recently announced plans to eliminate 35% of their workforce. Meanwhile, other operations like Nashville Public Media and Louisville Public Media report massive donation surges from community members desperate to keep their local stations alive. NPR President Catherine Maher promises the network will step up by redirecting $8 million from their budget to help struggling local stations. However, critics question whether this gesture can possibly fill the enormous financial void left by eliminated federal funding. The broader implications extend far beyond media circles. Public broadcasting serves as America's emergency alert system during natural disasters, provides educational programming in underserved communities, and offers civil discourse in an increasingly polarized information landscape. Without federal support, these essential services face potential collapse in many regions. Here's the controversial question nobody wants to address. If public media truly serves the public interest, why are elected officials willing to eliminate it based on perceived political bias? And if Americans overwhelmingly support public broadcasting funding, Why doesn't that support translate into political action? The shutdown timeline is aggressive. Most staff positions disappear with the September 30th fiscal year closure, leaving only essential personnel to handle final administrative duties through early 2026. This rapid timeline gives stations minimal opportunity to develop alternative funding strategies or restructure operations. What happens next could reshape American media permanently. Will local communities step up with private funding to save their stations? Can public media survive without federal support? Or will entire regions lose access to independent journalism and educational programming? The stakes couldn't be higher. As Harrison noted in her statement, public media has been one of the most trusted institutions in American life, providing educational opportunity, emergency alerts, civil discourse, and cultural connection to every corner of the country. Now that institutional trust faces its greatest test, the question isn't just whether public broadcasting can survive this funding crisis. It's whether American communities will fight to preserve something they claim to value. So here's my challenge to you. If you believe public media serves an essential role in American democracy, what are you willing to do about it? Will you contact your representatives, donate to local stations, or simply watch as this most trusted institution disappears forever? The choice and the time to make it is running out fast. What's your take? Is this the end of an era, or an opportunity for public media to prove its worth without government support? Share your thoughts, and let's start a real conversation about the future of independent journalism in America. PBS-NC cuts funding. Voluntary separation offers hiring freeze explained. In a shocking turn of events, PBS North Carolina, PBS-NC, has announced it will offer voluntary separation packages to most of its permanent employees, alongside a hiring freeze due to significant federal funding cuts. This move comes as part of the Reorganization Through Reduction, RTR, program, aimed at avoiding involuntary layoffs. But here's where it gets controversial. The CEO of PBS-NC, David Crabtree, openly stated, "We did not create this. It was dictated by Congress." This statement highlights the tension between public media organizations and the government bodies that control their funding. Back in July, Congress passed a